Hello, this is Jane Sigford, convener of the podcast Views and Voice Above the Noise. The podcast is hosted by MASA, Minnesota Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast is with Senator Steve Cwodzinski. He's in the Minnesota State Senate and representing the district around Eden Prairie. I was lucky enough to have worked with Steve when we were both employed by the Eden Prairie Public Schools. Steve at that time was the government teacher. As I helped kids register for classes, they all wanted to take government, which filled up every semester. I couldn't understand why, because for me, government was sort of dry until I observed Steve. He made government come alive. He was excited about the content and the whole democratic process. You will hear that excitement throughout this podcast. Steve was gracious enough to squeeze me in between two meetings that he had during opening week. He talks about what he sees as issues and what we as educators can do to help legislators.
I love this as much as I did teaching, and I didn't think that was possible.
Although he taught government for years, he had no intention to run for political office after his retirement until he met a former student of his.
But about that December, end of November, the head of the DFL party happened to be at the high school talking to the young Democrats. He saw me in the hall, and he was an Eden Prairie grad. The head of the DFL party for Minnesota is Ken Martin. Okay. So I had him in class. Honestly, this was like 95 or something. Okay. He said, I heard you're retiring. Congratulations. Do you want to meet for coffee? And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, because we have a lot to talk about, so and I knew what he was alluding to, that he wanted me to do something, politically. And then we met, and he said, I think you should run against David Hann.
In this current political climate where it seems like politicians will say anything bad about their opponents that come to mind, Steve doesn't feel that way.
Honest to God, I don't want to ever say anything bad about my opponent.
Not smart.
How does that make us better? Let's build each other up and make us better people.
Steve shared some of the issues that the legislature is looking at right now.
That's where I just came from, and it's so exciting having a social studies teacher in the governor's mansion. Because for years I would joke with my kids that 40% of the state budget is education, and we've never had a teacher in the governor's mansion. And about once every 4 years, some savvy kid would raise their hand and say, well, Governor Dayton taught when he was a younger man. I'd be like, wow, well done, you know your stuff. But, he was like 21, 22, 23, and then he left the profession. Yeah, he taught in Brooklyn or Bronx, like an early version of Teach for America. But then he left at like 24. He was done with his 3-year gig or whatever it was. But now we've got this governor. At his inauguration last week, he made a teacher feel valued. So I just feel that he gave a shout out to educators, and he talked about the importance of education, and that we have lost sight that, my words, not his, that this used to be a noble profession. And I still think it is, but I don't know if the rest of the state thinks it's as noble as it should be. So I think right now we've got this guy in the White House, in the governor's mansion, that I think is really going to be a person of his word. We talked about getting the funding back up to where it was in 2001, 2002, whatever that time period was, when all of a sudden education took those huge hits. And we're still behind in inflationary dollars where we were in 2001. So I'd like to get that back up, but it could be as high as 10%. We're still behind. I'm trying to get the actual numbers. Some members of the opposition party aren't comfortable with the 2% over the next 2 years. That wouldn't even bring us close to where we were way back when. But at least it's a step in the right direction. So there's that. And then the safe schools is huge. So I went to Eden Prairie High School. I met the new principal. So I asked him to give me a tour of the new hardened entrances. And I talked to the security people, and they hate it. And this isn't the kids and the parents, it's the actual people that's job is to keep the kids safe. They say it's impersonal, they're not building relationships anymore. It's not my words now. It's not why we went into education. I could have worked at a prison if I wanted to, but I don't want to. It's so, you come into the building now, after the school day begins. You have to show a photo ID underneath a bulletproof glass, just like like showing your passport at the airport. It's kind of like that. You talk into a microphone, and it's real impersonal, and there's all these cameras, and it's sad that we've come to that. But I think I think it's a waste of money. It's sad but it was a political compromise, because how do you argue against, I want my kids safer from the bad guys? But anybody who analyzes it intelligently, the bad guys now will just wait outside for the bell to ring if they can't get in. I went to the high school after Parkland, and I got into 11 classrooms. I just said, I've only been gone 3 years, so I still got all my buddies. I sent them all an email and just said, if I can come in, like this was 2 days after Parkland, tomorrow, I'd love to see what the kids are thinking. And I'll never forget the one girl, she said, when I go to assemblies now, I take my seat closest to an exit, and I look around to make sure I'm ready and to think, this is a high school kid, and they're having post-traumatic stress. So on another note, I'm the gun, this is not about education, but I guess it is. We just got to get guns. I know I'm co-authoring background checks, that red flag laws. If Patty, my wife, calls the cops and said, we have weapons in our house and I'd like you to remove them because I think my husband is either going to harm me or himself, the cops can come and take them, but then I have the right to appeal. So I would go to a judge or somebody and say, she's the one that's mental, not me, and I want my guns back. But it's called red flag laws, and so I think, and there's opposition to them because cops are coming and seizing possessions without search warrants, but it would make people safe. You have no idea. I could talk for 30 minutes nonstop without a breath with a number of ex-students of mine that are now in their 20s to 25 that are dead because of either opioids or guns. I was door knocking. This is 2 years ago now, but it's my favorite story. I'm door knocking with my daughter who works at Hazelton. So we're door knocking together, and we get to this house, and this guy comes to the door. He's about my age, maybe 60 or so. Comes to the door and he goes, "Swad, how you doing?" I'm like, "Do I know you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm your bus driver for your trips to DC." And I go, "Oh my God, hi, how are you doing?" He goes, "Well, wait a minute, there's somebody here who wants to meet you." And he goes, "Come on up. There's somebody here at the door." And this kid comes up, and he's about 30, and he goes, "Mr. Cwodzinski, how you doing?" And I go, "Wow, yeah, I was in your government class, 15 years ago." I go, "Wow, how are you doing?" And the dad, he sticks out his shirt like this because his buttons are bursting, and he starts saying it's home for the day from his halfway house. He's been chasing demons and his opioid addiction, but this time we know his mother and I are so proud of him, and this time he's going to beat it. Well, all of a sudden, my daughter has a connection. "What program are you in?" And they start talking, and I'm proud of my buttons are bursting on mine because I'm so proud of my daughter and this guy's proud of it. And we say goodbye, and it was like I'm telling everybody for the next couple of days about this amazing, magical moment door knocking. 3 months later, I pick up the morning paper. Eden Prairie bus driver and his wife killed by their son. Didn't escape his demons. So he stabbed them both. He broke out of his halfway house or whatever and went home and said, "Where are your prescriptions," or whatever they were on, and they wouldn't tell him, and he stabbed them both to death. And so that morning I saw the paper, and it's got to be the same guy. And I remembered the house, and I drove over there, and their police tape was all the way around the house, and somebody had put a little school toy bus at the end of the driveway with a flower in it. And I'm at funeral, and this woman, she comes up to me and she goes, "Hi, Swat, how you doing?" And I go, and she goes, and I go, "Oh my God," and I remember, "How's she doing?" And she's dead. She had a sports injury. They put her on prescription drugs. All of a sudden the doctors and the parents are concerned about her addiction. They cut her off. Now she has to go find him illegally, and she died from a drug overdose. There's a woman, a Ukrainian woman, great person. She comes to meet with me one day last spring here, right? She sat right there. "How you doing?" And she goes, "You had our son as your teacher." And I go, "Oh my God, what was his name?" And he goes, and I go, "Oh my God, how's he doing?" "Dead." My husband and I were sitting around having coffee at our kitchen table, and the St. Paul police call, and they say, we found your son slumped over in his car with a needle in his arm. He's dead. We tried. There's a woman down here, her name is Chris Eaton. She lost her daughter to addiction a few years back, and she's like the guru on all these issues. And so we tried to adopt a penny a pill for education purposes and prevention, but it failed to get out of the committee in the Senate.
Steve also has a personal experience with gun violence.
I'm giving this speech, South Minneapolis person, you'll relate. I'm giving this speech at Excelsior Commons to a bunch of people about gun violence, and I don't know if it was Protect Minnesota or Moms Demand Action, what the group was, but I'm giving this speech, and it was great, and I'm walking away back to my car, and my daughter, she calls me up, and it's my daughter. She's on lockdown in the grocery store. She's walking through the parking lot of the grocery store. And she's walking through the parking lot, she sees these two guys, and they're fighting, and all of a sudden she's with my, that time, 9-month-old grandson. Now he's a year. All of a sudden these two guys are fighting, and one of them pulls out a gun and starts firing in the parking lot. She grabs the kid, leaves her purse in the stroller in the parking lot, runs into the grocery store. The manager takes everybody and locks them in the back. And while I'm giving a speech on gun violence, my daughter not a victim, a witness to gun violence. No one was killed, and within minutes the two had fled in their respective cars, and it wasn't even in the paper because we're so common occurrence. It wasn't even in the paper.
Is the legislature looking at various issues about gun violence?
I think in the House, I think so, but I don't know if it'll even have a hearing in the Senate. I'm not real hopeful about anything happening with respect to gun violence. But what we'll do is we're making schools safer by hardening them, so no one has to give up right to Second Amendment rights.
Another approach to school safety is one that Steve Cwodzinski would like to see.
This $25 million for school safety, if I'd had my way, all that money would have went to counselors. We're 46 in the nation on high school counselor to student ratios. And here's the education state at 46 in the nation. And shame on us. I mean, these kids, and I meet with the counselors about once a year since I came here because I want to know how I can help you, because I just know they're back in the day, the counselors, they could counsel.
Steve's proud of another way the legislature has come up with to help teachers receive training in how to recognize danger signs with our kids.
I think one of the bills that legislature passed in the last couple of years that actually made it through Governor Dayton's signature that I'm proud of is when we renew our licenses now, we have to have 4 hours of suicide awareness training. Educators never had to have that, and so that's good.
Steve and I talked about other ways to be proactive instead of reactive. The conversation about being proactive instead of reactive is a welcome one.
The new commissioner, Mary Catherine, she said that in this meeting I was just at, that we need to start being more proactive and not reactive.
What can school people, administrators, and teachers do to help legislators?
When I brought this up with her just today, with Mary Catherine, I said, we don't hear enough from teachers, and maybe it's because they just can't get away, because it's so much work. Well, you know what it's like to miss work. It's almost more work to miss work.
Well, it is.
And we need to hear more from teachers, because we hear from plenty of administrators and experts, non-classroom teacher experts. Maybe after 2 years of being on the education committee, it's just interesting. So that'd be my advice, is give your classroom teachers time to come down here and testify.
The superintendent, should they be watching the schedule to see what topics you're discussing and then recruit teachers to come?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be a great idea. And I think part of the onus is upon Denise Specht and Education Minnesota, and they could do, and I think they do a great job, so I'm not sure, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but maybe they could do a better job of, here's what the education committee is hearing next week. And if all of a sudden, I'm not telling Denise what to do, because she's great.
There are 3 things that have been documented in the research that really impact student learning. 1, time on task. 2, a rigorous curriculum. And 3, highly trained teachers. Steve and I talked about the role of professional development to keep our teachers well trained and engaged in the profession.
But it sure seems like in my first 10 years I was going off to other places to become a better teacher.
And it did help.
Oh my God, yeah. It made
Makes
me...
a difference.
I don't think I ever came back from time away from that school and thinking it was a waste of time. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying this. But I do remember within workshops and meetings where I thought that was kind of a waste of time. So maybe we are better served by going outside of our own borders and meeting other people in other districts, and that's more valuable. And for years, I used to tell every superintendent this at the kickoff. They would bring in all these outside experts, and for years I'd say we have all these amazing people in kindergarten and middle schools in our district that I would much rather hear from than bringing in, that's a whole nother, because that kind of contradicts what we were just talking about.
What are some issues on the horizon?
I think we're in a unique position, a member of Congress, now a governor, and an educator governor, and that cross-subsidy, I don't know if you're that the federal government promised to pay 40% of special ed fees, and they've only done 17, 18, 19%, it varies. And I think he's in a unique position to tell the current Congress, you guys promised us 40%, you've never delivered, pony up. And that could be a huge coup for all the states and to help us with our school financing. So I'm hopeful for that. I'm on a personal note, I'm trying to get this civics bill passed, requiring American government to juniors or seniors. Now schools don't have to require it. They can kind of weave it in wherever they can based on the standards. If schools do require it, it's usually in 9th grade, which in my opinion, kids aren't paying income taxes, gas taxes, they're not signing up for selective service, they're not. And so I just think for juniors or seniors, when they're starting to get ready for voting and their first jobs and all those things, adulthood, I think it makes more sense. So I am working on that. Another bill I'm introducing is on, when I was out door knocking, how many people want a personal finance class, because they all have stories about, I got this young employer and he doesn't know how to balance it, or what, and so these kids are graduating without a personal finance class. And I think it would help the student loan debt too. I think they wouldn't be as likely to have $80,000 in debt if they had more management skills and prep work for that, because I think this is a huge problem, this school debt that no one's addressing, because we have all these baby boomers who want to get out of their $400,000, $300,000 suburban homes, and we're just assuming these kids are going to come behind us and they're not going to be able to get loans.
Thanks to Steve for taking time from his busy schedule, especially during opening week. This is Jane Sigford signing off. My email is jlsigford@comcast.net. I'm leaving you with some inspirational words from Steve Cwodzinski, Senator from the Eden Prairie area.
I never looked forward to a Friday or regretted a Monday in 33 years of teaching. I loved being an educator, and this is better, and I'll tell you why. I love this place better. I don't have to wait for a bell to ring to go potty. I can go potty whenever I want now, and this time it's like being back in college, but this time I want to learn everything. And when you were 21 years old, you're like, I want to do whatever you thought was more important than what the professor had to say. But this time, every single person that comes through this door has so much to offer and they try to make me a better American, Minnesotan.